I grew a crop of potatoes last year using a method I found on YouTube. I leveled the ground a little bit, scraped off the top vegetation, oh my god, the top vegetation, scraped off the top layer of the soil. Then I placed the potatoes directly on the ground and covered them with compost, grass clippings and old hay. I also hilled with grass clippings and old hay. I estimate the yield to about 10 to 12 times the amount of potatoes I planted, which I was very, very happy with. My biggest lessons from that first season is that I can cover the potatoes much more than I would think. Potatoes are often recommended to plant about 4 inches or 10 centimeters deep. And when you think about it, that is actually quite a lot of cover. My potatoes, though, were covered enough so that none of them were exposed to light. That would have made them turn green. Not very good. However, the plants spread out instead of growing up straight, which is what I'm used to potatoes doing. When I harvested, I noticed quite a lot of small tubers along the stems, and I suspect many of them would have grown into normal-sized potatoes if I had covered the potatoes more or hilled more. That said, I also harvested quite a lot of very large potatoes, and I certainly didn't mind that. Baked potatoes, anyone? Great. Another mistake I may have made was the way I hilled the potatoes. I placed old hay around the plants, the young plants, which was a lot of work. Looking back, it might have been both unnecessary and part of the reason my plants spread out instead of growing more upright. In other videos I've seen, growers cover young potato plants with additional mulch. The plants then grow right through it. So this year I'm experimenting with much heavier cover. My original plan was to cover the ground with cardboard and or old hay before planting. In the end, I wasn't sure I had enough material available. Instead, I harvested the vegetation growing on the site, laid it back on the ground as mulch, laid out the potatoes and covered them in grass clippings, compost and old hay. I also harvested vegetation just around, you see, I have plenty of vegetation. I applied the coverage in several rounds. Even though I'm quite sure about my observation from last year, I didn't feel confident covering the potatoes a whole lot. So doing it in several rounds, that allowed me to observe, think about it, sleep on it, to gain the confidence to add more coverage. In the video that inspired me, they used a surprisingly thick layer of mulch on top of the potatoes, much more than I initially felt comfortable with. Another experiment this year is to rely more on the potatoes' ability to open up the soil themselves. What I've done to prepare the ground is I've been picking rocks and cutting vegetation to lay back as mulch. Other than that, I've done virtually no soil preparation. We'll see how it works. Have you grown potatoes using no-dig method? What works or doesn't work for you? Or would you like to try growing potatoes this way? What's encouraging you and what's holding you back? Tell me about it in the comments, and I'll see you again in another video.